imagining that if we are stepping into the inner world of, I don't know how many people in a week, 20 to 40, more maybe, I don't know. We're going to get fatigued. And then there's going to be moments where we get it wrong and we make mistakes. And,
of course,
how do we deal with that? How do we cope with our burnout?
Oh, that's a big question. It's happened to me. I got burnt out now a handful of years ago. I was seeing, Sue was upset with me because I was seeing 11 couples a day, and and I don't think that's maybe all that unusual, but in big cities where there's high need and that's what you do, like, I get in the zone. But her point was that you can't do good EFT for that sustained amount of time. And I got it. And it's true. And I burned myself out. And so I thought that in my youngness of the youth coming into the field, I thought that was what was normal, a 40-hour work week, right? So I didn't know. I was naive and didn't know, and burned myself out, and then have had to ratchet back. And so now I limit the number of couples. At the most I'll see in a day is 8. My ideal day is 5 or 6, but my schedule's wonky. Like, I had a long day yesterday because I'm flying to Sacramento tonight. So I'm not going to be in the office the rest of the week. And so there's some people in need that I want to make space and time for, to help them. So some of that's logistics. Some of that is lack of self-care for me, that we all need to do better at self-care to restore our, as we know, empathy is a renewable resource, but it's not an unending resource. So we have to do things as self-care to restore and rejuvenate our empathy, because as we know from all of our externships, empathic responsiveness is the foundation of all EFT interventions. So if I don't have access to my empathy, I feel like, oh, I need to call out sick. I need to find my empathy. And if I can't, then that's a real key to me. That's a real red flag for me to change my day or to change the plan.
I mean, I think that's one of the issues, is how do we know when we're fatigued, and one way that is if you can't find your empathy.
That's, for me, one way those early years taught me that I was squeezing empathy out of myself because I really didn't have it.
Yeah. Oh, it's such the worst feeling.
It's such the worst feeling, and too tired to empathize.
Yeah. Totally. So anyway.
Yeah. So that became, over the years, and that was what, I don't know, a long time ago now, 8 or 10 years ago, that my felt sense of my own empathy is a reference for me, an intrapsychic reference that I reference moment by moment throughout my day. Like, long day of clients yesterday, I'm tracking my empathy and making sure I have some. And then, even though it's tight timing and the next couple's waiting, I just take a minute. I just take a minute. I look at the text message from my husband. That helps me feel restored momentarily. I realize I'm not alone. I do things. We all need to keep doing things to restore ourselves, while we give so much emotional, like, in trauma, we talk about loaning out our limbic system. Well, there's a tax for that. There's a cost. Any loan there's a cost on us.
Right.
And so how many times in a day can I loan out my limbic system? Tracking that, and at the foundation of that is, do I have empathy to loan out my limbic system?
Yeah. Okay, good. And then the other question is say you're fatigued, or even say you're not, but you're just somewhere on your learning curve, and you make a mistake and you recognize it after the session is over. How do you make repair with your couple? Do you mention it, or just keep marching on?
Well, almost always I have to mention it, but we're all different in this way, and it depends what the mistake is. So without getting into any specific content, you have to follow your own sense of what feels good to you. Like, we're just human, and we have to make space for our own humanity, but of course we make mistakes. All of us do. And so what is the next best thing for me to do to help myself restore my own humanity, as well as continue to care for my clients and their suffering? And so often times I will reach out to a client in between session and say, I did it last night. In fact, it's not in between session, but I saw this couple and I said to her, do you mind if I start? I want to share how worried I am because I used the word rigid in the previous session and I feel worried about that. At the end of the previous session, I used the word rigid and I all week felt worried about how that word landed for her. And so we just start with that because I've been preoccupied by that. And if I had another 10 thoughts about it or 3 thoughts about it, I probably just should have sent an email or even called and say, hey, I feel worried. I'm afraid I used the wrong word. That's a very simple mistake, not even a mistake probably. But when I feel worried, then I want to care for myself to take care of my worry as I'm also caring for the client. That's where it becomes a both and. We always are working in service of the client, but it doesn't mean we neglect our own sense of worry or dread or whatever that feeling is when we feel like we didn't do something the way we wish we had done it. Like that matters to me. I want to say that to my clients.
I love that. That's really interesting. So if you have like a worry, a bad feeling, something that sticks with you and it resonates throughout the week, then you will go back and say, I'm worried I used the word dread. I'm not sure how that landed. Your face did something funny and I want to check in with you. And even if it's because, Catherine's sort of mind messing with herself, then fine. That
Fine.
is a possibility. But if you're
Yeah.
feeling something, it matters, even if it's about you and not about the client. There's nothing wrong with checking it out.
Yeah. So depending on what it is and the content, I will get consultation to help myself decide, is this something I bring back to the client or not? And so safe consultation really matters. Is this just Catherine mind messing with herself? Or is this really, do I want to circle back with the client to make sure my rapport is intact, which is so important, that alliance. I work with a lot of trauma survivors and I've learned never to take that alliance for granted. And so consultation is really important to help me get good judgment around, is this just me being exhausted and worried and a little bit, I always live with a little bit of fear that I'm doing the wrong thing. And that little edge of anxiety probably makes my judgment not so good. And so that's where I get support from a safe other who's, sometimes it can be my husband who never knows who my clients are, but I think I said the wrong thing and I'm preoccupied and I'm waking up at 2 a.m. and he can soothe me. Other times it's calling a trusted friend and colleague. You've helped me, Jen, process the clinical moment, my clinical judgment, and what my options could have, would have, should have been. And therefore, how do I care for the client? What do I want to go back to the client with? And then in the last few years, I've learned when I see you added this, a lovely reflection of, I said a word called rigid or dread and their face changed. Now in session, I'll say, I saw your face change when I used that word. I need to slow down. Did that land hard? That doesn't feel good. You prefer a different word. Please give me the better word. So I'll track more in the moment. Like our attunement, we're outsiders, and attunement is an inexact science. So we use their words as much as possible, but of course then we'll conjecture and bring new words in, like in that role play, worry or fear. But if their face changes in a way that makes me worried, I've learned to pay attention to that worry as close to the moment as I can. And then if the moment goes by, which happens, then I'll find a way to circle back. Sometimes that means I ask the clients for a conference call because something big happened, or I heard from one of them and I need to make sure I'm in touch with both of them. Sometimes it's an email. Sometimes it's a promise to myself, this is where I'm going to start the next session.
Yeah.
Different ways to cope. So sorry, I have so many words about making mistakes.
No, it's good. It's good. It's a hard thing, but I hear you, right? We check in with our colleagues, supportive spouse, and also you can check, and it might not be about, your client might not be suffering just because you were worried, but you
That's
can.
right. Right.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.